A boy runs with his brother through the cornfield near their house. They wear shorts and tank tops, and every aspect of their lives exudes that tantalizing nostalgia of summer. Their mother comes home today. After a recent accident, she has had to undergo facial reconstruction surgery and returns with her head fully covered in bandages. But something about her is off. She isn't friendly anymore. She is no longer kind. She tells them that she just needs her rest and that she is tired from her procedure. But based on her actions and her demeanor, they begin to suspect that the person underneath the bandages is not really their mother at all. This is the setup for the haunting 2014 German film Goodnight Mommy, and through the use of slow build-up and excruciating body horror, it explores the ideas of trust, loss, identity, and the relationship between mother and son. Horror about the relationship that mothers have with their children isn't a new idea at all. In fact, it is a long-standing tradition that goes as far back as 1964 with Joan Crawford in Straight Jacket. And it continues over the next decades with Psycho, Frightmare, Rosemary's Baby, Serial Mom, I Dismember Mommy, Mother's Day, and Mommy Dearest, which subsequently is actually about Joan Crawford herself. But out of all of these, I think that I like Goodnight Mommy the best in its portrayal of this uncanny relationship. The entirety of the film resides in a world of the uncanny and strange. Nothing is right here, everything is just off. As a work of art, it relies on the logic and symbolism of fairy tales and dreams. The children seem to have been living on their own with no adult intervention for quite some time now while their mother was away, and a ghostly man walks down the street with an accordion, half singing, half screaming, to nobody. And all of this is done to build the idea that is present through the entire film of ever-shifting identity, and not knowing exactly who a person is or what you can expect from a stranger. The house that the three live in is decorated in large fine art photography prints that depict individuals that are obscured and out of focus, ones that blend in and become one with their backgrounds, similar to how our three characters are also photographed throughout most of the runtime. People almost always are filmed from behind as well without showing their face, and are frequently looking in and out of windows and doorways. Historically, windows and doorways can be symbolic in storytelling for potential. The potential of a hidden secret locked safely away, or of protection to individuals who hide behind them. They are the potential answers to mysteries, and passing through them can represent the great change within a narrative or the arc of a character. And in a similar way, I think here that the house itself that they live in is symbolic as a liminal space of the stagnant present that cannot last forever, the futile attempt on the mother's part to prevent change and to keep the status quo for as long as possible, ignoring the reality of their situation that change will come whether it is acknowledged or not. All summers come to an end after all, and that the locked doors and windows are a means for each individual to look out into their insecure future and back into their rose-colored past. The film winds in a lazy, hazy kind of way as they live together, questioning each other in secret, until it eventually rises to a slow boil of paranoia and distrust, as the children, Elias and Lucas, begin to think that the woman who is keeping them from leaving the house isn't their real mother, even when she removes her head wrappings to show her healed face. And all of this cultivates in a horrible sequence in which they tie her down and glue her mouth shut with an industrial adhesive, and they investigate her body, checking things like her eye color against old pictures of their mother to see if it is really her. And the film asks you to take a side and pick which party here is in the wrong in this interrogation, without giving you enough evidence to really sway you one way or the other. Because this sequence that goes on for over half an hour can either be viewed as two children trying to figure out why a woman would get plastic surgery to look like their mother and move into their house to raise them as her own, or an innocent woman being tortured by her own children after already going through the trauma of having her face so disfigured that the surgeon was needed to make her resemble herself again. And it is in this time that the way that you see these characters is constantly shifting, as each of their actions could either be malicious or justified, depending on your perspective. And the way that you feel about them changes moment to moment. It is in this moral gray zone that the entire middle of the film just sits, unmoving. And to watch it all play out before your eyes is harrowing, and in a way voyeuristic. Because the filmmakers here don't give you enough to feel one way or the other about the ambiguous situation. They force you to experience conflicting ideas, and the emotions that they make you rest with for a long period of time is deeply uncomfortable. Because you see a mother and an imposter, a pair of psychopaths and scared children, inhabiting the same space at the same time, morphing back and forth as each second goes by. The only issue I have here is that it brings into question the topic of how similar a piece of media can be to an older work without being derivative. Without giving too much away, even though I did love last year's Hereditary, there are parts of that movie that are extremely close to ripping off Rosemary's Baby. I think that it holds up on its own, but those similarities do detract from the film as a whole because of that, at least for me. And here, Goodnight Mommy has a similar relationship to Thomas Tryon's The Other, where there's a few key plot details that mirror that film and novel a little too closely. And I don't really know where the line is between homage and unlicensed remake, but it is certainly something that has to be talked about here, because if you have seen that movie, then some of the aspects here are glaringly mirrored. But I don't think that that is as important as it may seem, because all of that is mostly relegated to the last quarter of the film, which is also the weakest quarter. The strengths of this are in its originality, in the way that it sets up the stage and has its acts play out. Any time that the mother is on screen in the first half before the interrogation begins is extremely upsetting, because the fear of not knowing who she is, mixed with her unnatural movements and look, make her for me to be one of the scariest entities in horror in the past decade. Just the fact that she exists and is in this house living with these two boys who don't know who she is upsetting. Horror based around the face is personal. Without a face, it's hard to feel empathy for a character, and if anything is added to the face, or taken away, we don't like it on an instinctual level. The eyes are the window to the soul, and without eyes, we can't get a read on the emotion that a person is feeling. Similarly, as Greg Capullo shows here in his instructions on drawing series, the mouth works with its eyes to show the real emotions that a person is feeling, and that the same set of eyes can show different emotions based on what other information the mouth is giving us. Facial horror is something that the masters of the genre rely on, because of the sense of unease that it gives us, and because we ourselves can relate to it quickly and easily. Rene Magritte would do this all the time in his art, from his series of paintings of people with bags over their heads, to others that are obscured by objects. And I think here in Goodnight Mommy, the fact that we can only see her bruised eyes and mouth, while the rest of her face is hidden under bandages, that are so tight that they restrict her from being able to show any emotion, means that we are forced to project fear onto her that we feel, based on the idea that we don't know her true identity, even if she isn't doing anything outright scary. And this leaves us in a place of unease. Goodnight Mommy is a spectacular film that builds slowly, tentatively, and patiently until its big ending. And even if you can see some of the things that it's preparing to do in its story, how it gets there is really interesting. It's a slow reflection that explores the horror that relationships can build over time if honesty isn't valued and reality isn't recognized, where the person that you think you know best suddenly seems like a total stranger, and you find yourself posing for a photograph, not with your family, but with blank faces and empty expressions.
Virginia.